What is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today we are doing a what's in my gym bag. So as somebody who reviews a lot of training gear, I often get asked like, okay, what do you actually bring in your training bag every day to the gym? So what is in this bag has remained relatively unchanged over the last few years. Now, I will rotate my shoes, obviously, because I review shoes on this channel, and I will rotate gear here and there depending on like if I got new knee sleeves or if I'm using a different belt, etc. But honestly, the sleeves and the belt in this bag right now have been what I've used over the last few years. And I was gonna make this like a gym bag essentials video, but to be quite honest, I think those videos are bullshit because they suggest that you need all these things to go to the gym. You really don't. You just need some gym clothes, some shoes, and you can go a long way in the gym. But as you get more specific with your lifting and your needs, you will likely start to find things that you want for your training purposes. So let's go over what's in my gym bag and I'll explain why and when I like to use each piece of gear. All right, so my first piece of equipment is what I would consider honestly like probably my most important piece of equipment. And if I'm ever traveling and I'm only bringing one or two things to train with, and I'm very specific with my training in the moment, this will be the piece of equipment that I bring, and I get stopped in airports all the time in the security line because of it. But this is a Pioneer lever belt. So I have had this belt now for like 5 or 6 years. It has been phenomenal. There's relatively barely any wear on the inside, which is awesome. So the durability of these belts are awesome, and that's why I often recommend them for folks. Plus, with the belt itself, you pretty much get a lifetime guarantee on it. My buckle broke a few months back. Pioneer sent me one with no questions asked like a few days later, so I love that about it. And they're a small company based in the US, so there's a lot to like about Pioneer gear. If you're on the market for a belt, I would highly suggest looking into Pioneer belts, especially if you are a powerlifter or somebody who wants a belt that is a bit more rigid in nature. Now, when will I use this belt? So if I'm in prep for powerlifting meets or if I'm working with top-end strength work, I will rock this belt. Now, I don't typically wear a belt for most of my training sessions. I will go beltless until for deadlifts and squats when I start to pass a certain threshold, but generally speaking, I will try to reserve this for my top-end strength work when I am more specific with my overall training. But a belt, I think, is very essential for any lifter who is starting to push the envelope with what they're capable of with squats, deads, etc. And they're starting to notice that their torso stability is starting to lack a little bit, especially at certain numbers. So belt, I think, can be incredibly important for intermediate, advanced lifters, and even sometimes beginners who are starting to get more niche with their training and diving right into powerlifting right away. The second piece of equipment that I swear by, and also is a piece of equipment that I travel with all the time, is, where are they? Liquid chalk. Liquid chalk, I think, is essential because not every gym has a good chalk setup. And so on top of that, when you consider most commercial gyms have like barbells that have been pretty stripped from just abuse on racks and whatnot, and they lack knurling, this can be a game changer. So whether you are working with a barbell or you're doing accessory work, liquid chalk can be phenomenal. You can pick up some cheap liquid chalk on Amazon too for like 13, 15 bucks. Might even be a little bit less depending on what you buy, or a little bit more depending on the brand. But this is a piece of equipment that I would say is essential for everybody, especially when grip is an issue. And if you're training in gyms or if you're just traveling and you're not really certain about the equipment you're gonna be using and you don't have a barbell, or you don't know if you're gonna have a barbell with good knurling or equipment with good knurling at that, I'm telling you right now, if you invest in liquid chalk, you will never regret it. And now, mine is pretty hard right now, so I do need to buy some new stuff. My current 2 gyms I go to have chalk, so I haven't had to buy in a minute, but liquid chalk, a definite must, especially for lifters who are on the road. The next piece of equipment that I would call a staple in my gym bag is a good pair of knee sleeves. Now, the sleeves that I've been rocking for the last few years are these SBD knee sleeves, and now these things stink and they are starting to actually break down on the inside of them. So I might be investing in a new pair very soon, but these sleeves have been awesome. 7mm neoprene, super rigid. So I love them for heavier squats because I have ruptured a quad in the past. So my left knee often gives me issues, especially when I am ramping up my strength work or I'm in prep for powerlifting comps. So these can help a ton. I just think the proprioceptive nature of the sleeve and what it does for my knee stability really helps out both my confidence, but also just my ability to stay tight under the bar. So a good pair of knee sleeves, I think, is an essential, especially for lifters who are starting to get heavier with their cleans, snatches, squats, etc. Anything where you're moving into deep knee flexion and you're starting to push more weight at higher volumes at a greater frequency, I think knee sleeves can be an awesome tool. Now, you don't necessarily have to go with an SBD because these are a little bit more expensive, and oftentimes folks will reach for SBD sleeves because they are competitive strength athletes. So you could go with something like a Gym Reaper's knee sleeve. Now, I keep this pair in my bag, and now this is not necessarily a staple. This is more of like a vanity thing that I like to keep. Now, I keep 2 different pairs of knee knee sleeves in my bag. I know it's kind of bougie, but I keep the SBD for my like powerlifting or heavier strength sets, and then for sets or volume, and then for workouts. So if I'm doing like a CrossFit WOD, or if I'm doing a Metcon where I'm gonna be moving through a lot of knee flexion and I know my knee's gonna get aggravated, I'll rock something like this Gym Reaper knee sleeve. It's 7mm neoprene, but it's not as rigid, so they're a little bit more comfortable to wear for longer durations and in different workouts. So you don't necessarily need 2 pairs of knee sleeves, obviously, but over time I have learned that I like having a rigid sleeve for my strength work and a slightly looser sleeve, or like not as rigid sleeve, for more of my like functional workouts, CrossFit WODs, etc. So knee sleeves, belt, gym chalk, those are 3 staples. I have one more staple in my bag outside of just a couple of vanity things. My 4th staple is a good pair of weightlifting shoes. So since I review weightlifting shoes, training shoes, and barefoot shoes, I will typically opt for either a cross training shoe or a barefoot shoe based on the workout I'm doing, and I won't rotate those shoes intra workout. And if I'm doing deadlifts, for example, let's say I have cross training shoes, I'll typically go barefoot for the most part, unless I'm in a gym where I can't go barefoot, or if I'm doing a workout with a lot of high volume pulling mixed with other things. So the pair of weightlifting shoes that I'm rocking right now that I've really loved is the Anta 2 model. This model has been phenomenal. They have a slightly higher heel elevation too, which helps out my lanky ass because I have super long femurs and shins. So for front squats and back squats, these help me out with my mobility needs and some of my constraints. But I often recommend having a good pair of weightlifting shoes on deck for most lifters who are more specific with their training, especially in the context of squats. So intermediate and advanced lifters, I think these can be super beneficial. And even for beginners who are starting to get more specific with their squats, I feel like a weightlifting shoe can be a really nice tool for helping you achieve different ranges of motion that you might not be able to achieve yet with a flat shoe or a lower drop. So a good pair of weightlifting shoes I think is a good investment for most lifters, especially for lifters focused on strength or lifters who regularly rotate in snatches and clean and jerks and they want to get better at those skills. So we've covered my gym bag staples. Now let's talk about some of the like vanity non-essentials that I typically keep in my bag at all times. So the first thing is a band and a hip circle. Essentially, I like to pump my buns sometimes before I train, and so if I am like sitting all day or if I'm traveling and I just want to get some like nice passive glute work in for a warm-up purpose, I will rock these. Also, if my knee is bothering me, I will do some additional glute warm-up work because I think that additional stability at the hip does translate to a better feeling for my knee. Now, whether that's placebo or not, I'm not here to debate that with you, but it does help me out at least mentally. So these are 2 staples as well. Now, do you need these in your gym bag? Definitely not. However, over time, I have learned to just keep them in there. They're very small to keep in there, so they're very easy to pack away. And I find that they can be really useful when I'm traveling and if I'm on the road and I've been sitting a lot. Another piece of non-essential equipment that I keep in my bag, but I very, very rarely use is a pair of wrist wraps here. So I have not prepped for a powerlifting comp in like over a year. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I'll ever do another powerlifting comp. They're just too boring for the way I like to train right now. I'm very into the hybrid style training. I've been running a lot more, but I keep these in my bag for occasions where I might want to press a little bit heavier. Now, generally, I will dumbbell bench press outside of every context that's not powerlifting focused. So pretty much if I'm not in prep for a meet, I will not barbell bench. And that's just because it messes with my shoulders. I've ruptured both AC joints from college cheerleading, and I just don't really think it's that beneficial for my overall hypertrophy focused and aesthetic needs with my pec training currently. Now, these can be awesome for overhead presses as well. And that will be a rare occasion when I will use these. So if I am working like with 3 RMs and down for overhead press and I really want to try to move some weight and stabilize these weak baby wrists, I will use these. But otherwise, there's something that I keep in my bag just because I have used them before in prep. But otherwise, there's something that I'll keep in my bag just because they're small and easy to pack away, but not necessarily because I use them all the time. So they're kind of one of those things that you just keep in a backpack, but you rarely use it, but you're always like, well, maybe I'll use it one day, so you just decide to keep it. The last thing that I'll keep in my bag is some non-stick pads and some gauze and basically some non-stick tape or athletic tape to just wrap areas that I might cut myself in the gym on. So for example, when I was home in Missouri for Christmas last year, I was doing cleans and deadlifts. They had a super sharp bar, basically nicked the crap out of my shin, started like kind of gushing blood from the scar tissue on one of my legs from skateboarding and hockey and everything else. So I had to use those and wrap up. Also, I have used those for my tattoos. So whenever I have a new tattoo, I'll sometimes put it on if I know I'm gonna be super sweaty and it's a bigger tattoo. So those are another piece of my gym bag that I never pretty much take out and just leave in there for just in case measures. I feel like it's similar to like keeping a compressor in your car. You're very rarely going to use it, but it's very nice to have, especially in the context where you do need it. Now, you might be sitting there wondering like, wait, no wrist wraps? Yeah, I don't really use wrist wraps, so the lasso hooks or anything like that, because I will typically hook grip all of my pulls. And if I'm doing any form of upper back hypertrophy work, generally speaking, my grip doesn't fail, so I don't really need them. So I will not use them that often. Now, every once in a while in a blue moon, soon, I will borrow my gym's pair for doing like a heavier set of lunges. So if I'm doing like a 3x10 with like lunges with like 100 pounds and whatnot, I will put those on for the dumbbells, just because if my grip's already taxed from a pulling day, then it can be useful. But honestly, I try not to program in that means because I prefer not to lift with a super tired grip. Also, last thing, because I guarantee I'm gonna have some asks here, what bag am I using? So this is a hybrid gym bag that Steph and Hayden sent me a few years back. I have used it ever since. I don't have the best recommendations on bags. I don't review bags. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know what bags are out there right now regarding best for gyms. So I'm not the best to ask for bags, but I would suggest looking into gym bags that have separate compartments. This has separate compartments inside of it, and it is phenomenal for keeping like your belt away from your shoes, away from your knee sleeves, because when those are all sweaty, it get pretty stinky when you're letting them all mingle. So definitely look into a bag with some compartments if you are on the market for a new gym bag. But overall, guys, that is what's in my gym bag. So I have some staples and also some non-essential staples that just kind of stay in my bag. I hesitate when I call them staples because you don't really need them. But for me personally, there are 4 things that I always like to have in my bag for training: a good pair of weightlifting shoes, a good pair of knee sleeves, a weightlifting belt, and liquid chalk. Now, if your gym bag looks different than mine, let me know in the comments below what you use regularly and what you really enjoy, and explain why, because I feel like we all have our own kind of flow with our stuff that we keep with us in the gym. So I'm really interested to see what my community and subscribers rock to the gym themselves. But as always, guys, if you have questions on this video, or if you need help with some of the gear that I have that you might be thinking about investing in, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.